In 2005, around the time I was just starting to learn to code, I actually went to a friend's wedding in India, in the Punjab. And it was a multi-day affair. You have kind of marching bands and white horses, and you kind of change light bulbs, and it was great fun. And then I'm in India, and so I went traveling, and I went into the Himalayas, and then I went across to Rajasthan, to Udaipur, which is where the lake palace is. But the thing was, it had been so hot, like it had been 40 degrees and just sunshine for months, and so the lake had completely dried up. I stayed in this wonderful little place called the Dream Heaven Guest House, and it was 4 stories up and a terrace, and normally you'd be looking out over this lake, but I was looking out over this kind of spontaneous kind of wild animal park in the middle of the city. And I just remember watching all this, and I have this vivid image of these bull camels fighting. So they would take like a kind of 100-yard run up, and then 2 of them would just run at each other and kind of bash in the middle of this kind of arena. And on the side, in the kind of ghats going up to the city on the far side of the lake, there were these families or groups of elephants. And they had obviously had babies or children because there were just these little cute baby elephants running around everywhere in this space. So as you may have deduced from the title of the talk, this is the mental image that I would like to leave with you, right? Little baby elephants, yeah, just running around everywhere, on your desk, in your hand, in your pocket. Right? And that's a theme I will return to, but before I get to it, I want to talk about moon boots. The day before I left for that trip, I was in London, I went to the Comedy Store, and I saw the comedian Sean Locke. I don't know if we have any Sean fans in the house. Yes, yes. He died recently, of course. So he's known for kind of stand-up and panel shows like Carrot in a Box and stuff, but actually he wrote a TV series once, which was called 15 Stories High, and it was about characters who lived in these flats on a South London housing estate. So it was kind of 15 stories, 15 stories. And one of these characters was a recently divorced dad. And he was going through a kind of rough time, and he had a young daughter, and it was a difficult relationship because she was going through the sort of parents splitting up and stuff. And so she had this thing where his daughter, who was a bit high maintenance, really wanted a pony, and specifically a Shetland pony. And it came to the point where she wouldn't go and see her dad unless he got a pony. So what do? He got her a pony. And he didn't have anywhere to keep it, so he kept it in his council flat. And in order to keep this kind of horse secret from the downstairs neighbors so that they didn't complain and get it kicked out, they kept it in moon boots. Which is funny, right? Because it's kind of a Shetland pony and moon boots. But it's also funny because you're just not really meant to be able to keep a horse, a pony, inside of a council flat. So I'm CEO and co-founder of Electric. We're one of the local first software platforms. We're like an open source platform for doing sync on top of Postgres into local first applications. We're a startup. Part of my job is to go and raise money. So I talk to investors. I've probably talked to like at least sort of 200, 300 over the last year or so. And I basically pitch local first to them. And nearly all of those conversations, or the vast majority, boil down to the same one question. And it's something that's been touched on in some of the other talks, but it's this why now? A lot of people get the proposition, they understand that it can be better, but they want to see evidence that this kind of shift in the way we build software is going to happen now. And they cite what we've seen before, that a lot of this has been done before. Like we have some of the original gangsters in the room. I think we have Jay Chris from Couch. I don't know if he's here somewhere. Alex was talking from Realm before. And these projects, right, they're hugely influential, not least on all of us. But if we're honest with ourselves, they didn't actually change the way that most people, most developers build software. Like, we still live today under this tyranny of this three-tier architecture. I also want to say the 12-factor app, but that's just a jab at Adam down there. So, like, it is valid to ask this question, like, why is it going to be different this time? Like, why are we all here? Like, why is there this palpable sense of energy in the room about this happening now? And I think, as we know, and as we've seen a lot of the talks, there's a whole bunch of reasons, right? There's the research and the algorithms and the thought leadership and the frameworks and the libraries and the tools and the lighthouse apps and the value propositions and the DevOps proposition and the operational savings, etc. But the one thing that I wanted to focus on in this talk is a real, like, hard, unarguable advancement in this, right, the client. And particularly I want to talk about the web browser, because if we're talking about local first becoming like the best way of building software, the web is the dominant platform, and as a paradigm it needs to work with the web. And if I go back to like 2005, or when I was starting off as a web developer, it was this incredibly cramped, limited environment. You have like limited resources, you've got like no storage APIs, or you've got very limited storage APIs. You can only run kind of certain code, and you have to kind of operate like under the kind of limitations of what's in that environment. So given that context, it made sense when starting off for the web to keep the data in the cloud. Much like a Shetland pony inside of a council flat, it just doesn't really make sense to keep the data inside of the client. Whereas now, there are no resource limitations in the client anymore. We have a native full performance file system in the browser, like Johanna's alluded to with the OPFS, right? This, like the client, the browser specifically, is now designed to store large data sets with high performance and like proper durability guarantees. And on top, we have WASM. So we can run any code we like inside of the web browser, inside of the client. And instead of having to live within the abstractions that are provided by the kind of browser vendors, WebSQL being like their way of kind of doing this stuff, we as developers can bring our own abstractions. So like the browser provides these low-level APIs, and we can build any higher-level APIs we like on top of that. And so that's the point I want to make, right? I want to say that's what's actually firmly changed in this generation, this evolution of local first. We don't live in a tiny, cramped environment like a council flat anymore. We live in a lake palace. And we can have any animals we like, right? Ponies, camels, we can have elephants. Because it's not just that we can have databases that were designed to run in the client, like SQLite, like Realm, like DuckDB, for example, which are all awesome. But nowadays, we can literally run a fully featured Postgres database inside the web browser. So this, for example, this is PG-Lite, which is our lightweight WASM Postgres. It's a 2.5 megabyte gzip download. It runs the whole of Postgres fully featured in single user mode inside the web browser, as well as other JavaScript environments. And you can just use it in your application. It's a standard npm install. In this case, it's like a virtual file system on top of IndexedDB. You can build a virtual file system on top of OPFS. And what we've now built into it is a mechanism for dynamic extension loading. So the promise of using like a fully featured database like this is you can use the same capabilities and extensions of your database on the server inside the client. So for example, some of the stuff we've now done is we've integrated PG Vector as an extension, so you can do hybrid vector relational local first apps with local AI, and you're syncing exactly the same data structures on either side, client and server. You can run PG Analytics inside it with GPU acceleration inside the browser. In fact, now we can run DuckDB inside Postgres, inside the browser. Yeah? and you stick sync behind that kind of stuff, and as we've seen from the other talks, right, this sort of three-tier architecture and this imperative data fetching, right, you just don't need it anymore. And one of the primary reasons is you can just have the data that you want in its natural format. You don't have to do with this serialization. You don't have to do mapping between representations. You can just have the right data wherever it needs to be, right? On your desk, in your hand, in your pocket. Little elephants, just running around everywhere. And as of 2 weeks ago, it's live in Electric. Flip an MVAR, you have Postgres in the client. We have a session in the Expo Day tomorrow. Come along, we'll show you how to build up from our quick start through partial replication to using Postgres in the client. And I know I'm slightly out of time, but just before I finish, I did want to give some key credit on this, right? It's a team effort. There's a lot of people working on Electric. There's a bunch of people working on PG Lite. We're also building on work that we inherited from the Neon database team. But there is one guy who made this lightweight Postgres WASM a reality, and he's in the room, and that's Sam Willis there, if you'd like to put your hand up. And if anyone, a round of applause. Yeah? So as I say, check it out. You can see the stuff on our website. Come and have a play on the Expo Day tomorrow, and we will see if we can all fit our elephants in the room. No moon boots required. Thank you.